Your department's climate or interpersonal work environment is an often overlooked key to success. In this episode, we'll discuss how to have a positive climate in your department. Hi, I'm Rick Kendall.
And I'm Fred Ball.
Welcome to Management Mastery. The purpose of these podcasts is to share what each of us has learned about good and bad management in our combined over 40 years of experience, both as managers and executive coaches. During that time, we've coached managers at every level in companies from Fortune 100s to brand new startups in all major businesses, including nonprofits, government, and education. So whether you're just starting in your first management position or are an experienced manager looking to strengthen your management skills, we know our podcast will be valuable to you.
So what we want to do is we want to take a look and define the ideal climate and talk about why it's so important. We want to evaluate the department climate currently, and we want to determine what changes you need to make in the current climate, if any, and implement them.
So, department climate is essentially how the staff interact and treat with one another, as well as how they interact with clients and others outside the department. A positive, respectful climate is essential to the successful functioning of any department. A negative working environment can handicap any department. So ideally, you want to create and reinforce a climate where staff treat each other with dignity and respect, listen actively, ask productive questions, communicate constructively with candor and openness, and where staff feel supported and have a strong connection to their work.
And then what you want to do is you want to evaluate the current department climate. So the way that you're going to go about doing that is you're going to spend time walking the floor, you're going to be talking to people, you're going to be watching, you're going to be listening, and you're going to be asking yourself questions so that you can evaluate them. And let's talk about a couple of the questions that you're going to want to be thinking about as you're traveling the department. Do your staff treat each other with dignity and respect, no matter the situation?
You know, a part of that is do they listen to one another? Do they ask questions about what people are saying? It's really how they interact, I think. And a good place I've found to get a sense of that is in staff meetings.
Okay. A second question is, do they listen actively and ask effective questions to elicit solutions? I find that seeking bits of information, so many times when you're having a conversation, it's the little almost throwaway comment that you hear that really makes a difference. Then a third question you'll want to evaluate is, do they communicate with candor and openness about business issues to build excitement, optimism, and trust?
Yeah, it's so obvious sometimes that people aren't really talking to one another, or that they just don't respect what somebody is saying. Rather than trying to understand it, they just kind of brush it off and don't pursue any kind of real conversation, I've found.
I think that's right. And then another question is, do staff members feel support, have a strong connection to their work, and know their contribution matters? I think you were going to also talk about people's behavior in meetings.
Well, yes, I was, and I've found personally that the place you can really get a sense of the department climate is in meetings, how they interact, how your staff interacts with one another when they're sitting in front of you. It's almost like a family at the dinner table. How do they behave in front of daddy? And you can see, are there people that have problems with one another, where you can see just tension between two or more people. There, you can spot people who don't say anything ever in a meeting. Things like that really become evident in a staff meeting. And I think you want to just note those and even take some notes afterwards so that you can follow up with the individuals that you've noticed may have a problem or an issue or really aren't in sync with where you would like the climate to be.
Talk a little bit more about as you're evaluating when you start to see things like conflict with a couple of people.
Well, yeah, and what's important, I think, is in the meeting, you don't want to comment or intervene right then. You want to meet with the individuals afterwards and then discuss it with them one-on-one and ask in a neutral way about the dynamics that you've observed, both either involving them or their observations and understanding of what's going on with other members of the team. For example, I noticed there seems to be tension between George and Sam. What's going on there? What's that issue? Or I noticed that Sally never speaks in the meeting. Is she shy? What can you tell me about her? That sort of thing, but just very neutral, and that you're trying to understand how everybody is interacting.
One of the things that we do want to say is that it's going to take some time for you to evaluate the department climate, and you need to give yourself that time. This is not go around for a short period of time for an hour or something. This may take some days. It could even take a few weeks. It could even take a month or two. But this evaluation is important.
I couldn't agree more. And one thing to keep in mind is that since you're the new boss, even if they know you from before, they're going to be on their best behavior initially. So you're not going to be observing the reality right away, I don't think. So they need to get relaxed around you. So, things start to pop up after a while. So yeah, it's going to take a while, and just be patient.
And once you do this evaluation, you're making decisions along the way. You're continuing to think everything through that you're seeing, and then at the end, you're going to determine what changes you need to make, if any, and then you're going to want to implement them. And the process that goes on then. And this is back, whatever time this is, whether it's a couple of days, whether it's weeks, whether it's a month. What you want to do is you want to meet with your staff and let them know what your findings are, where you saw strengths, where you saw weaknesses. And for goodness sakes, when you talk about your strengths, congratulate people that I see that we really are getting along with one another. But then on one of those other questions that we talked about, the group may not be doing quite as well. But then ask for feedback and discussion on those things, and let people come out with their thoughts and their feelings. And then what normally you would do is not necessarily at that meeting, but it would be that you go away from that meeting, take the input that your staff has given you, process it, and then decide what changes you're going to make, and then come back at your next staff meeting and tell them what you're going to do. In other words, you're implementing at that period of time, and you tell folks, look, we're going to evaluate the results continuously. I will continue to ask what you're seeing, and we'll make any changes as necessary.
Yeah, I think what's important in all of this is that you treat it as a team effort. That it's not coming from on high. It's look, we need to function as a team, and we need to respect one another, as we've said. We need to learn from one another. And so I think you want to, have open discussions with your staff at all times, and also always phrase it as, these are the things that I think we need to be doing, and get concurrence on that, so everybody's on the same page, and nobody feels they're being singled out for criticism or whatever. It's always got to be a team effort.
Rick, can you give an example of an issue that a new manager might?
Well, I mean, I think we've sort of hinted at a couple of, one that happens all the time is where you've got two staff members who are not getting along for whatever reason. And that can be very disruptive. It can just kind of spread bad vibes, as we used to say. But to deal with that, you want to, first of all, you don't want to call anybody out publicly. You want to meet with each of them privately, individually, and also in a kind of nonchalant way, talk to other members of the department to get a sense. Like I said, what's going on between George and Sam or Alice and Fred, and then meet with them after you've met with them individually. Then meet with them together once you have a sense of what the problem might be, and maybe a way to kind of mitigate it, and then try to get them to talk things out in your presence. And sometimes you need to make changes. You need to separate them in a way, or change their assignments so that conflict isn't going on.
Your point about knowing when to talk publicly and when to treat someone individually is really important. That's where you can lose people if you start to criticize them in public.
Oh, yeah. No, you got to be very careful about that. I mean, you don't want to put people on the defensive. You don't want to cause that kind of additional tension. Yeah.
One place where that can be an issue is if staff members are continually interrupting one another in team meetings. You don't want, again, you'd like not to have to talk about this right after someone has interrupted, but at some point that you need to let your staff know that interrupting one another is not acceptable. And then after you make the statement, then if somebody interrupts, you may have to talk to them privately. But when people are giving an update around the table, that's usually not as much of an issue if you have each person give an update on their goals and objectives. But after that, when you're having time for a general discussion or you're talking about a problem that the department is facing, that's where it's a much more open discussion and where you can get people getting excited and interrupting one another. And if somebody's excited one time, then you may let that go. But if they continue to interrupt, then you're going to have to deal with that. And the department is going to have to figure out some way that they have to signal people that it's time to stop that.
Yeah, I find that when that happens most often is when you've got a disagreement on an issue between two or more people, and you've got different points of view, and people will start to interrupt one another before one person gets their whole thought out. And I'll tell you where it's really an issue is on Zoom meetings. I don't know what it is, but I think we all, check our best behavior at the door when we log on to a Zoom meeting. I've found just personally, it's much easier to yell at your computer than it is to yell at somebody sitting across the table from you. And when you're the manager or the meeting leader, you really have to, I think, be the referee. And as you said, Fred, however, I mean, it may be a mute button, but even in those situations, very calmly and without singling out anybody specifically, say, we have to let everyone finish their thought before we voice our opinion.
Rick, you've faced one once in a while where someone is one of your people is criticizing your own department outside.
Oh boy, well that's another problem. Yes, and it's one of those things where you really have to deal with it, because it does sort of poison the well, not only within your department, but outside. And you have to talk to the person and say, look, if you've got a problem, you need to discuss it with me and with the team, not with outsiders. We have to function, as a cohesive group. And let's talk about the positive actions we can take to fix the problem, and not undermine the team with, you're telling people outside we don't know what we're doing, or whatever it is. So, and the other thing to point out is, when you do something like that, when you badmouth an individual or the team as a whole to outside people, it makes you look bad. You think you're making yourself look good, but that's not the way it usually works. So for your own sake, you really shouldn't be doing that.
No question. And then one of the things that we need to remind the new manager is that it's critical that you model the behaviors that you want. Your staff is going to be watching you, they're going to be listening to you, and they're going to be modeling your behavior. So the statement that Rick made before, and the questions about whether your staff treat each other with dignity and respect and listen and communicate well and feel support, you need to be modeling those behaviors, because they are going to be copied by the members of your staff. That is absolutely critical. And the other things that we've been doing in this podcast is we've been talking about defining the ideal climate, evaluating the current climate in your department, determining the changes that you want to make, and then implement those changes.
We hope you have found this podcast useful, and will come back again for more management mastery. If you have any comments about this or any of our episodes, or would like to find out more about our other services, including one-on-one coaching and group seminars for managers, visit our website at careercoachclass.com. Thanks for listening.